Welcome to the Charles Carroll Society. I am your host, the self-appointed Bard of the American Redoubt. Allegedly in a series of private text messages, John Jacob Schmidt of Radio Free Redoubt, a war combat veteran who has actually gone far and above to serve this nation multiple times, by the way, in many horrible places, and who is an excellent patriot, spoke about what he may or may not would do if some violent Antifa showed up in northern Idaho or eastern Washingtons and started to attack Republican conservatives. First, terms. Antifa or anti-fascists. This is an Orwellian term. These guys are not anti-fascists. This is kind of Orwellian. Orwellian term means like, war is peace, truth is propaganda. They use a reverse term. You're a racist, they're not a racist. Antifa are basically communists that use fascist methods after much study. Antifa, or the anti-fascists, are in truth violent communist black shirts. Sometimes they're anarchist violent black shirts, but these are like the fascists, the brown shirts. These people are the stormtroopers of the far left. They are the stormtroopers of the globalists. I'm going to call them violent communist black shirts because that's what they are. The violent communist black shirts often receive neutral or positive media coverage, which we're going to go into in future episodes. The violence of the communist black shirts is often ignored by its network of supportive reporters who kind of like vaguely explain what they're doing. Oh, they're trying to just get together. They always downplay the violence of the left. These violent communist black shirts, with support for Black Lives Matter, the Revolutionary Communist Party, which advocates the violent overthrow of the United States government, and other far leftist groups, including local Idaho and Spokane so-called Trump resistance movements, were not just peacefully assembling. They were planning a day of rage, which no one really knew what that meant. Here are some of the highlights. There are hundreds of examples, but if you go globally, there's thousands, because these violent communist black shirts are an international organization who literally are the stormtroopers of the globalist media. Anyway, here's some of the recent highlights of the violent Antifa violence, or these violent communist black shirts. John Hitchenson's, who was not Antifa as far as we know, but he was a far left Democrat, he supported a lot of Bernie Sanders and all that communist stuff, attempted to assassinate the entire Republican leadership when it was at a baseball game in Alexandria, Virginia. And somehow the Republicans and so-called conservatives somehow just want to forget that happened. The violent communist black shirts rioted when President Trump had his inauguration day in Washington, D.C. 6 police officers were wounded, cars were burned, and windows were shattered. Before a speech by Milo Yiannopoulos at the University of California, the violent communist black shirts and related organizations again rioted and devastated the campus of the University of California, Berkeley, causing more than $100,000 in damages. The violent communist black shirts protester, Eric Clanton, broke the skull of a Trump supporter with a bike lock. And this guy was a professor at a university and an Antifa supporter. The local Berkeley police, who many people feel are in bed and supportive of these violent communist black shirts said, we can't find them. It took the incredible 4chan board not a long time at all to find this guy. They identified him very quickly, and eventually he was arrested and convicted, by the way. The violent communist black shirts have gone so far as to threaten and harass Republicans, conservatives in many different places. Thus, the text messages that allegedly John Jacob Schmidt and several other patriots and one traitor were talking about was what to do when these extremely communist, these violent communist black shirts show up in their neighborhood. And they were not overly sensitive, let's put it that way. For your edification, I have never met a true killer of men who was not rough in his language. I've met a few officers who kind of maintain that officer bearing, but the overwhelming majority of the killers of men are rough men. These men are, to put it mildly, dangerous. What I can tell you, most people that I know and I really disagree with allowing our political differences to move to violence. But even though we all work for peace, something that Republicans and conservatives really need to take to heart is it takes two to agree on peace, but it only takes one to initiate violent conflict. And unlike some, I know that there are men who prepare for the worst, even while they pray and work for the best. Some people are under the misunderstanding this terrible misunderstanding that violence is somehow the sole legitimate right of governments. It is not and has never been. Others believe that violence is the sole right of far left groups. I can most assuredly tell you it is not. I can say clearly as I can. I can be as clear as I can. As George Orwell pointed out, many of you sleep well at night and peacefully in your bed only because there are rough men ready to do violence on their behalf. There are plenty of rough men spread all over red state America, and many of them are right here in the Cascade and Rocky Mountains. Now, we here on the Charles Carroll Society, of course, believe in only nonviolent protests that is approved and authorized by the government. Nothing in history has ever shown that anything has been decided by violence. No American has ever violently opposed any ungodly law. We ask all to think on this incident and submit the appropriate prayers. I will be sharing more about this text messaging and this reporter and trying to show those men of goodwill how incredibly interrelated or interconnected these so-called journalists, which are actually far left propagandists, are. And hopefully that will show with you where these guys are coming from. Viva Cristo Rey, Viva Cristo Rey, Viva Cristo Rey y the Virgin de Guadalupe.